What's under the bed?
Smurf!
What is this, dude? Why did Rihanna even sign on to this? I cannot believe we're on our 5th theatrical Smurfs movie at this point. What is the attraction to these characters that makes Hollywood executives say, you know what, guys? I think we should make another Smurfs movie. I remember being maybe 8 years old when the live action one came out, and it's barely over 10 years later, they're doing the same thing again. And since the Smurfs are thrust upon us into the center of pop culture, I thought it would be a good time to revisit those films from my childhood. And in fact, why not all the Smurf movies? Dive deep into the nearly 70-year-old Smurf lore. Maybe we'll find a gem, maybe we'll discover the secret that makes those little blue guys so desirable. Maybe there will be hype moments and aura in the Smurf movies. Maybe that'll be a funny title that will get clicks. But first, this video is sponsored by Dr. Dipshit's Loser Lobotomy, an all-new animated series with a pitch pilot that you can watch right now, linked in the description, of course. The synopsis reads as follows. It's the year 1997. Entertainment is in the prime of its life, the internet is starting to rise in popularity, and a maniacal weasel is beginning his world takeover. Dr. Dipshit's Loser Lobotomy follows the titular Dr. Dipshit, a world-renowned evil scientist, and his love-struck assistant, Jensky Cavendish, as they go about their daily lives. The character designs are cute, and I really dig the color theory of the backgrounds. I won't spoil it, but I really would appreciate if you folks watching would take the time to check it out and support some good old indie animation. So to my surprise, the Smurfs and the Magic Flute actually came out before the American TV show by Hanna-Barbera. That's the one with Smurfette, Gargamel, the La La song, pretty much everything that built the cultural idea of what Smurfs is in the US. I had assumed for years and years after hearing it existed that this was some theatrical film that Hanna-Barbera threw together in the late 80s, but no, it's a Belgian production, The Smurfs' Country of Origin, with Peyo, the original cartoonist, credited as a director, from 1975. So, going into it, I was pretty excited. Somewhat obscure European animated film from the 70s, sign me up, yo. Now, I was hoping it would have some fun sequences, maybe some atmosphere, I don't know, be darker than the Hanna-Barbera version, have better animation. It's the worst out of all of these. Including the Neil Patrick Harris live-action films, this was the hardest to actually sit through. This film has nearly nothing going for it. Bad animation, drawn-out story, characters with zero personality, bad songs, and if you know me, I am willing to forgive a lot in certain movies if one of those aspects is good or has something admirable about it, but there's nothing in this film I can say is worth going out of your way to watch. The story here is that this knight and the prince, I think, the English dub never says, go on an adventure after this little blonde asshole Stu finds the flute that he plays, and it makes everyone who hears it dance uncontrollably. A robber steals the flute and uses it to hire an army of mercenaries that will invade the kingdom. So our heroes have to go and find the Smurfs and get them to make another flute to stop the villains. One of the bigger problems is that this movie is really slow. It takes 11 minutes to convey what, in the comic version, they get across in 7 or 8 pages. And with this comic, that's not that long of a read. It's like they took the slowest, most dry, boring approach to adapting the comic, where every single panel is the equivalent to 4 minutes of screen time. And the comic itself this is based on, it's not even a Smurfs comic. Technically it is because the Smurfs are in this, but this is based on their first appearance, which was an entirely different comic strip. Fun fact, the Smurfs is like another Popeye situation, where originally the comic was about these two before it spun off into its own thing. Anyways, because the Smurfs themselves are side characters, they're not given much character and are more like one big unit. Certain iconic characters like Brainy or Greedy show up, but they're only there for gags, like Brainy repeatedly getting clobbered on the head for talking too much. Dude, they were out for blood back then. The main characters don't have anything to them. Either Johan or John in the UK English dub is the good guy with no other real traits aside from being annoyed by Peewit, or William in the British dub. I found him really annoying. Other characters are the king, or the bad guy, who looks like Rich Evans. Again, I mainly watched the UK English dub from '79. The voices of the main characters are fine in that. However, since this is pre-Hanna-Barbera, all the Smurfs are the same actor pitched up or down. It's really off-putting.
We tried several times to smurf the flute from him, but we just can't re-smurf it.
I don't like personalities.
And what's worse is that they sing.
I'm a happy enough Smurf, but please don't bother me, or I'll punch you on the Smurf. That's my personality.
Nearly all the songs in this movie are sung by the Smurfs, or during the part where they're at the Smurf village. I don't mind these kinds of movies where songs don't happen for any real story reason, but aside from one, maybe, they're not good. It just drags out all the Smurf sections to make up for the fact that this movie isn't really about them. Wait, a Smurfs movie where they fake you out and it's human characters for most of it? Remind you of anything? I will say the score can be pretty well done. I like that they have this kind of mysterious, chimey theme for the Smurfs, and the melody they play on the flute is used pretty creatively. I like this part where they're looking for the guy who stole it, and it's all told through music and pantomime, but that's the biggest plus I can give it. As for the animation, I get that maybe they didn't have the biggest budget, or maybe the experienced crew, but there is just nothing interesting going on with the look of this movie. The posing is directly based on the comic, which can be good at times, but the characters don't move in any dynamic way. When they try to have characters who are more hyperactive like this merchant here, it's not it. They play the flute and the characters look like they're convulsing in pain, not dancing. The poses they're hitting would communicate dancing in a comic for sure, but not in the way they animate them here. Aside from one or two teeny tiny bits that were actually kind of fluid or surreal in a fun way, there's really no flair to the animation. It looks like a Saturday morning cartoon. And even Hanna-Barbera, who made the Saturday morning Smurf show, could do better looking theatrical movies than this. Maybe I set my expectations too high, but I did not like this movie at all. So post Hanna-Barbera, the producer behind Inspector Gadget, George of the Jungle, and the live-action Charlotte's Web gets the rights to the Smurfs, and another victim is claimed. Smurfs 2011 came out when I was that age where every kids movie felt like an event, because obviously they're being pushed directly to your age demographic. Toys, commercials, video games, can't not bring up Smurfs Dance Party on the Wii. Dude, remember when we were playing Smurfs Dance Party, you know, we were playing the game, and you got a little too excited for Who Let the Smurfs Out, and you started hurting yourself and others? Remember that, dude? And that's how big the marketing for this movie felt. And obviously I saw it in the theater. Obviously we had the DVD. And this is something I'm surprised never came up in the script the first time around. As a kid, the marketing kinda gave me everything I need to know about what a Smurf is. Like, I had no clue what they were before this, but the concept of weird little gnome people coming to live with some guy just seemed normal. Like, that's weird, it just seemed like a normal thing, like, oh, it's funny little characters. But does it hold up? Does the Smurfs movie hold up? The 2011 Smurfs movie stars a bunch of celebrities, including Katy Perry as the Smurfs. When the evil wizard Gargamel finds the location of their hidden village, with a group of Smurfs accidentally leaving their medieval fantasy world and entering the real-life New York City. There they meet Neil Patrick Harris, who has his own problems, like trying to make the perfect ad for the company he works at, and trying to balance his work life with his impending fatherhood. If that's boring, then don't worry, kids, because wacky Hank Azaria as Gargamel smurfs into the real world with his uncanny CGI cat in tow. Will the Smurfs escape Gargamel, or will these three apple high heroes forever be lost in the Big Apple? So Jay, what did you think of the Smurfs 2011? This movie is bad, dude. I have no rose-colored glasses or nostalgia for this garbage. I mean, I am nostalgic because I watched it as a kid, and I remember being in the theaters seeing all these iconic moments, but it ends there. I have more appreciation for the McDonald's toys than I do for this film. Yeah, I had a George Lopez Smurf, what about it? So let's start off with the biggest, most obvious critique you can make about this movie. Why do they look like that? They all have creepypasta, hyper-realistic eyes, and realistic skin pores, and hyper-detailed pecs and muscular structure. It's so gross and creepy. It's not as bad when they're hanging out with the humans, but when they're in the Smurf village or there's close-ups, why did they think this looked good? You could have just had the normal Smurf characters in 3D with maybe some kind of texture and realistic lighting, and that would have been fine, but to completely overhaul the designs to make them weird homunculi is so baffling. The fact that this movie made back 5 times its budget is proof that people would have taken their kids to see the original Sonic design in the theater. As a kid, I just kind of accepted that these movies had to have the boring grown-up stuff in them. It was either this or the Dan Aykroyd Yogi Bear movie that cemented that as a fact. I wasn't enthralled by the Neil Patrick Harris advertising executive plot, but I didn't hate it either. Looking at this now, seriously thinking about it in terms of other similar movies, this might be one of the worst ways to go about the talking funny creature meets real life dude with a mundane job plot. Hear me out. In both the Chipmunk movies and the live-action Sonics. They balance it really well by having the live-action stuff be integral to the cartoon hijinks, both through the real guys being the father figure to the cartoons, but there are probably other ways to do that. Neil Patrick Harris in this just feels so separate from the Smurf shenanigans. They're just there because they have to have a human companion. He's only involved in the story reluctantly, and any kind of camaraderie that he, the pregnant wife, or the Smurfs have just feels like it's there to be there. Even the moments when they're having fun together are when Neil's character takes pity on them and lets them join in his rock band jam session. The wife just talks to them like little children.
Where's Papa?
Gargamel's got him.
What? Well, we have to go get him.
It's all polite, but detached. Separate but equal. For the Smurfs to get home from New York, a bunch of magic stuff needs to happen, which just means they have to go on an adventure to X or Y location to get something that they need. There's this thing about Papa Smurf having a vision of the future and everything going wrong, but then for some reason the vision turns out to be false, and they never explain why or how. It has to do with clumsy Smurf messing everything up, but then he actually saves the day. I think it might be that Papa's vision was biased because he doesn't believe in clumsy or something, and that clouded his thoughts. Nah, they just smurfed up. Clumsy has an arc where the wife tells him to believe in himself, and he ends up helping everyone in the end. Very standard for a kid's movie plot. Even though all canon 100 Smurfs aren't a part of the adventure, the 6 that there are still are a lot of characters. They don't end up doing much with the rest. Smurfette is a girl who learns about fashion and materialism. She also acts as eye candy to all the boy Smurfs, who are technically her brothers. I don't know how that works. Brainy luckily isn't getting jumped every time he talks, but there's not much to him outside the nerd stereotype. Same with Grouchy. Gutsy, who they invented just for this movie, is the brave one who doesn't have much character aside from being a Scottish stereotype. Yeah, the Scottish Smurf really resonated with audiences, so much that they cut him out of the sequel. Because the Smurfs are all one note, I can't really get too into the performances. I do kinda like George Lopez as Grouchy. I think his voice actually suits him really well. Some of the other ones are notably different from the 80s cartoon, but if there was any kind of drama over Clumsy not having his iconic southern accent, that dust would have settled already by now. Katy Perry as Smurfette, I will say, probably the worst performance out of all the Smurfs. Maybe I'm thinking of the sequel because she's more of a main character in that, but I just get so sick of this wide-eyed, wistful voice she puts on. Playing Smurfette definitely put some kind of curse on her that she can't recover from, so watch your back, Rihanna. Sofia Vergara is in this too as the boss. She's the strict boss. Hank Azaria is really giving it all as Gargamel. I won't say that makes him an entertaining character to watch, but he works for this type of movie. The cat is played by Frank Welker, not really talking, more doing his Slimer or Curious George voice. This is a bit of a weird take, but I don't like the imagery in this movie of a realistic cat being sucked into a leaf blower and getting hurt in all these other ways. Am I the friend who's too woke? The undeniably best parts of the movie are when the Smurfs are left up to their own devices and are being chased around by Gargamel. The whole sequence when they go to FAO Schwartz was so awesome as a kid, and I think if I had to pick a favorite part, it would be this. Seeing tiny characters run around in the big world can be a lot of fun if done right. There are some admittedly fun moments here and there. Parts of this movie feel like a ride at Universal with how much they take the camera and zoom around these environments. This is something that the Nostalgia Critic pointed out in his award-winning review of this film.
Here, everything is at the same speed, the same pacing, and the same kind of movement. There's no variation, so there's nothing interesting about it.
While I think it is meant to just be jingling keys for kids, if it were in service of a better movie, there wouldn't really be any complaints. I actually kind of like that style. Also, his Mario comparison with that always rubbed me the wrong way.
What's more engaging, watching Mario go one speed throughout the entire game, or having him stop, slow down, go backwards, stomp on things?
The Mario who's moving at the same speed is cooler because he's moving at the same speed and doing all this stuff. Mario's nonchalant. Doug, go Smurf yourself and then go Smurf. The ending climax, as tired as I got of this movie by the end, is also fun. This is the fabled hype moments and aura from the Smurf movies. I had completely forgotten about this movie for years until one day, like 3 years ago, I remembered the stupid epic version of the Fa La 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 song and could just not stop laughing. There is something funny about these creepy blue realistic humans. The movie itself isn't funny when it tries to be, but come on. These stupid designs can kill in the right context. If you want to watch this movie for ironic value, be my guest. Other than that, and maybe nostalgia, if you're desperate enough, the Smurfs 2011 could be worth it. I think there's a good reason I haven't wanted to revisit it, or the sequel, and would rather watch something else from that era, like the Muppet movie, or Oh. Yeah, I don't know if they were cooking too good in 2011, to be honest. Remember the deleted ending to this movie that was on the DVD special features, where they did the ultrasound and the baby was a Smurf, and that was gonna be the original sequel tease? They had that in theaters too, but they pulled it. I forgot if we saw it or not, but we definitely was on the DVD.
Out of the shadows, barrage of witch tongue, cobra spit over a pot.
This movie is bad, dude. I have no rose-colored glasses or nostalgia for this garbage. I mean, I am nostalgic because I watched it as a kid, and I remember being in the theaters seeing all these iconic moments, but it ends there. I have more appreciation for the McDonald's toys than I do for this film. Yeah, I had a George Lopez Smurf, what about it? Smurfs 2 came out in 2013. Pretty timely because I was still the exact age for this when it came out. So it's a few years after the original. Back in the first movie, Smurfette revealed that she was made by Gargamel to seduce the real Smurfs, but then turned good. Here she has a nightmare about becoming her old gray self before waking up and realizing it was all a dream. Her anxieties about being that are not quelled, as it seems everybody's ignoring her, on her birthday no less. Meanwhile, Gargamel is living it up as a famous magician using what little magic he has left. He has two other fake Smurfs called the Naughties that he made from the same material as Smurfette. He gets the emo one to go and get Smurfette to give her the formula that will change them into real Smurfs, so that Gargamel can create his own redstone Smurf farm to harvest their magic energy. Also, Neil Patrick Harris and his family are back. There's his wife, his robot that almost mimics the behavior of a real child, and stepdad, who halfway through the movie is turned into a creepy CGI duck. Awesome. So for starters, they for sure focus tested the hell out of the first movie when they were making this, or at least tried to outdo the first one in terms of marketability, including the most popular Smurfs from the last one, a new duo of edgy anti-Smurfs, and less of a focus on Neil Patrick Harris's classic marketing job, here replacing it with wacky shenanigans with the stepdad and the kid. I need to get this out of the way real quick. The kid is not a good actor or that developed of a character, and in all cases of this, I don't blame the actual child who played the role of said kid, and was also Luca from Luca. You gotta start somewhere. So Blue, yeah, they named the kid Blue, really does nothing. All he's there to do is say one line per scene in reaction to what's going on. You could replace him with a dog and the movie would barely change. He's not a character. Oh, but if you replaced him with a dog, you wouldn't get the hilarious birthday party scene where the woke parents ask for an allergy-free cake.
This is an organic, gluten-free, antioxidant-rich acai berry cake.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the woke parent humor in the Smurfs too. That really resonated with me. And the stepdad is here who comes in and is nice to everyone. Neil Patrick Harris hates him though because he made him give away his pet bird as a kid, but it was because Neil was allergic to birds and the stepdad didn't want to make him feel bad. Yeah, I really enjoyed the Neil Patrick Harris stepdad bird drama plot in the Smurfs too. That really resonated with me. I think they tried to make it something that kids would be more interested in, but if anything, it makes this one a worse watch than the first. Because while the oh-so-captivating Sofia Vergara ad agency boss versus spending time with pregnant wife plot wasn't anything special, it was at least a break from the Smurf shenanigans. Here it just feels like a repeat of all the family stuff they try to do from the first, but worse, and is just there to interrupt the story they're trying to tell about Smurfette and her 2013 Tumblr emo sister. There's supposed to be some kind of parallel between the two about accepting family no matter what, but who cares? It's the Smurfs 2. They do a Sonic 3 thing where they get the humans more involved in the action, but I do not care. It's the Smurfs 2. The whole plot with Smurfette and Gargamel is that Gargamel tries to make her see that being bad can be fun, and tries to get on our good side, yada yada yada, so that he can have the magical formula for Smurfs. Just get some from the store, bro. I don't think they sell those in America, but Smurfette starts thinking that she doesn't belong with the rest of the Blues. Papa and a few more marketable Smurfs from the first come back to Earth and try to get her back and meet up with the family. The one-noteness of the supporting Smurf characters feels so much more pronounced, because they don't even give Clumsy anything to do after his little arc in the first. Grouchy has a running gag where he tries to be positive. I actually don't mind it, because again, I like what George Lopez does with the role. Grouchy Smurf, but it's just another running gag that doesn't contribute to anything. Instead of brainy or gutsy, they accidentally bring along Vanity Smurf, who is a character from the show and comics. But overall, I feel like they didn't need 3 extraneous comic relief characters in this movie, which already had very little substance. I think a majority of this movie's actual cast has nothing to do with the actual story. The whole thing is so sluggish, and not in the way the 70s one was. Between all the rehashed stuff with the human characters, more of the same Smurf Smurfs running around, and more Gargamel. It's like an AI-generated soup of things from the first, meant to hit all the same beats in under 90 minutes. In and out. No passion, no kissing, no nothing. And one more thing, from my imaginary producer perspective, why'd they scale down the cast of Smurfs? I know it goes against what I said, but maybe to save money or what I assume was to bring back the ones that got the most laughs in the first, but it's a sequel to this type of movie. You gotta up the stakes. You gotta have 300 Smurfs running around. I'm sorry. I remember as a kid they marketed the hell out of these two, but that wasn't enough to make it a hit. Kids weren't running around back then so excited to see Vexy and Hackus on the big screen. This underperformed compared to the first, and yeah, I can see why.
And they all fall down.
This movie is good. I really liked it. So as you can imagine, Sony were like, why didn't people want to see the Smurfs too? And gave it a few more years before giving it another shot with Smurfs, The Lost Village. I think my perspective is warped because every other Smurfs movie has been bad, and I've been watching all these in a row, but this was such a breath of fresh air. Watching this felt like seeing color for the first time. The plot here deals with a lot of similar ideas from yeah, that one. Every Smurf in the village has their own trait, but Smurfette doesn't have a thing, besides being a girl. One day, while poking around Gargamel's castle, they find out about what appears to be another group of Smurfs out there in the woods. So, one night, Clumsy, Brainy, Smurfette, and Hefty, who they sort of subbed out for Gutsy in the other movies, go on a quest to find this other Smurf village and warn them about Gargamel. Hijinks ensues with them going through all kinds of wacky, fantastical set pieces, meeting a group of all-female Smurfs, saving everyone from Gargamel, and so on and so forth. In this, the characters are so much more fun to watch. The vibes overall are so much better. Smurfette especially. Demi Lovato does a great job at making her this endearing character, helped by the animation, which we will get to. I like seeing Papa act like an actual dad to the main four and not like a cult leader, and Brainy's more of an inventor, still annoys everyone else. He and Hefty have this little rivalry that gets settled over the course of the action. Clumsy gets some kind of arc too about finding the one thing he's good at. I love the casting of Jack McBayer as Clumsy. He's such a good fit. He even gets to tag along with this tough girl Smurf like the Fix-It Felix and Space Lady from Wreck-It Ralph. In the last two, the Smurfs acted very cutesy and naive a lot, to contrast with the human characters, but since they're the main focus, obviously you can't have that. In general, the way they are, it feels like the writing was modernized compared to the 80s cartoon, whereas the last movies kind of placed the characters as they were in that show into a real-world setting. Gargamel here was a bit of a downgrade. Rainn Wilson, Dwight from The Office, doesn't sound like the cartoon version at all. Would be fine if this was the only Smurfs movie that existed at all, but when you compare him to Hank Azaria, who is an actual voice actor, it sounds like he's not trying. Frank Welker is the cat again. Gargamel also has a bird in this version, who's really just there so that they can have more action with him chasing the Smurfs around. They should have had that little boy Gargamel had working for him in the cartoon. Did anybody else my age's parents have them watch the cartoon because of the movies? We had maybe the first episode of season 1, but then for some reason a bunch from like season 12 where they had kids Smurfs and what have you. Alright, turn this off, bro. He brought up the Smurflings. Turn the video off. As for the girl Smurfs, there's a tough one, a quirky one, the girl Papa. I mean, they don't get a whole bunch of screen time or characterization, but they're still fun. Another big plus for this movie, and I think the main appeal, is the look, because oh my gosh, this thing is just gorgeous. The character animation is so lively and expressive. It wears the stylization on its sleeve like a lot of Sony's movies, though, like those two, it's not ashamed of being 3D either. They do a lot of fun stuff with the camera. There's so many fun layouts and great storyboarding. I feel like they had a lot of fun designing this fantasy world that the Smurfs travel through. A big part of the movie is set piece after set piece, and you don't really get bored of it because it's all done so creatively. The forest environments all look so lush and real. They designed all these types of trees and flowers. There's like native biodiversity, bro. And they scale it perfectly to the Smurfs' height. It feels like a real setting when you have the characters walking through it. Another small detail is how they integrate modern technology with this little ladybug Brainy carries around. Neat details like that are what make me appreciate this movie. This really feels like it was made with care. I can't wait till they're done with the live-action Sonic movies so they can make animated ones like this. But then the studio doing that would probably be the same one doing the new Smurf movie, so can't win. Overall, it is just another modern kids movie with a lot of the same kind of jokes and story beats, but it's on a higher end. It's got a lot of craft to it, and I think if I was a parent, I would rather my kids watch this over any of the others. So far, it's the best Smurfs movie OAT. No contest. But will Smurfs 2025 trump it? Will the Rihanna Smurf movie be better than the Smurf movie? Well, here we are. The verdict, ladies and gentle Smurfs. This movie, it's okay. The marketing for this movie is 1,000% worse than the actual experience of the thing. And yeah, it's not funny. Yeah, the story is baffling. Yeah, the animation is cheap looking at times, and the voice acting is not a highlight, but I feel like there was a level of creativity in the movie that made it bearable. If this was attached to any other IP, I feel like people wouldn't care too much one way or the other. It's just that audiences in the US at least are so sick of the brand. I mean, it's an IP that not many people are passionate about or nostalgic for, and doesn't even have that much appeal to new audiences, I bet. Yet, they've tried to reboot it as a mainstream thing so many times. Other things like Ninja Turtles will always have fans, Scooby-Doo will always have fans, but not the Smurfs. Like, imagine if they did this for another cartoon with the same level of popularity. Like, after the live-action Yogi Bear movie, they made 3 more. I'd get sick of Yogi Bear. Or if they rebooted Alvin and the Chipmunks 2 more times as a movie in the last decade, the general public is suffering from Smurf fatigue. And what doesn't help with that, folks, is the fact that they retread a good few things from the other films in here. The live action portions, of course, there are bits where the Smurfs are running around, dodging cars and all that. The sequences in the Neil Patrick Harris movies honestly had a lot more energy and creativity, plus they retread a bunch of the Smurfette stuff from the second one and the Lost Village. Like, they have to remind people of the backstory in the beginning, and at the end they do the exact same thing as the Lost Village, where it looks like she's joining the villains, but then turns around. They even recycle the plot of her not having a specific thing, not with her, but with No Name Smurf, played by James Corden, who is the real main character of the movie. The marketing for this was really out of touch, but the one thing they got right was putting Rihanna front and center instead of him. Rihanna has a major role too, she's a main character, but the entire plot of the movie hinges on James Corden's No Name Smurf. He sings an I Want song about how he feels left out. Yes, this movie is technically a musical. There are song numbers. The marketing completely hid that too. Instead, we got Influencer Smurf, who is not even in the actual movie. A lot of the recognizable Smurfs are here too, but there's no reason for them to be in the story, and all of them get one line or bit, max. Grouchy, brainy, hefty, clumsy, etc. I'm still baffled they haven't put Handy in one of these as a main character, since from what I remember of the Hanna-Barbera show, he was a pretty major reoccurring Smurf. Of course, though, they needed to make way for all the new characters, and while the posters make it look like they all play a big role, a lot of them really don't. You've got Papa's brother, Ken, Mama Poot, Gargamel's brother, Razamel, his assistant, Joel, he's so cringe, the Council of Evil Wizards, and the Neighborhood Watch Smurfs, Paris Division. Looking at the trailers, I kept thinking, what is this movie even about? This movie rewrites a lot of the Smurf lore, for one. It starts off with this backstory and some kind of bad-looking 2D rigged animation. I realize that I'm not gonna have any clips for a lot of this, so take my word for it. There are these 4 magic books that I think keep balance in the universe, and the books talk, by the way, and they look like one-off characters from the Amazing Digital Circus. One of the books escapes to Smurf Village, and the Smurfs have the book, right? So James Corden Smurf is sad. He doesn't have his cutie mark or whatever, so the book latches onto him, and now James Corden can do magic, and he's Magic Smurf. Magic Smurf tries out his magic and opens up a dimensional portal, which leads Razamel to them because they were actually in hiding, and Gargamel was stranded in the Smurf dimension because he was working for Razamel and tried to find the Smurfs. So the Smurfs have to go to the real world and find Ken, played by Ron from Parks and Rec, and he spills the beans that the Smurfs are magical guardians of the universe, and that the 2 brother Smurfs had a 3rd brother who got lost in the dimensional rift while protecting the book from Razamel. So now they have to go on a dimension-hopping adventure, and they run into the Snooterpooters, right?
The Snooterpoots.
Snooterpoots?
The Snooterpooters.
The Snooterpoots.
Ken and Mama Poot used to be a thing. They go to Razamel's castle, and he gets all the books, so the fabric of the universe unfolds, and Magic Smurf needs to use his magic to save everyone from the Council of Wizards. It's so bizarre. It's so overly ambitious, too, for a Smurf movie. The vibes are not dissimilar to a child banging toys together. I think they knew that the Smurfs were so oversaturated and seen as uncool, so they tried to make a big epic story about the Smurfs saving the universe. It honestly felt like a repeat of Sonic 3, which is also technically a Nickelodeon movie, since that's Paramount. The traveling around, the villain having a relative who betrays them, and the assistant here, it ending in this big space climax, and the sense of humor. They reference LinkedIn and Zoom Loom and DoorDash and a bunch of sort of current slang. Reminds me of the Robotniks have entered the chat, or when they have subtitles on the dog that say human. Maybe you could argue it's different in that, but I found it just as eye-roll worthy. The voice acting was also not very good. James Corden doesn't do anything outside his part as the insecure main character. I feel like Rihanna is doing a different take on Smurfette. After having watched all of these, she sounds a lot older, sort of a mentor figure to the James Corden Smurf. Also a love interest, maybe? Her being more of a leader was a good direction to take Smurfette, considering how she's been the focus of most of the others, and you know, we've seen her go through all these arcs. That being said, I can't separate her from the fact that it is Rihanna. She doesn't bring too much energy to the role. Plus, they give her a lot of these annoying one-liners. Can't forget the classic exchange between her and Ken.
I can smurf that smurf up and have it delivered to your house.
Dude, I was busting a gut with the G in the theater and all these horrible bits from the trailer. It was like Chicken Jockey, except it was only me in an otherwise empty Alamo Drafthouse. Surprisingly, nobody else wanted to show up to the opening night screening of Smurfs 2025. Alright, shout out to the employee who drew the little Smurf on my check. You guys made me feel like a king watching a court jester. Oh, get this crap off the screen right now, dude. Anyways, the rest of the cast didn't stand out. Ron from Parks and Rec as Uncle Smurf was what you'd expect. Oh, he doesn't get along with the OG Smurfs, and he's all grumpy. I was happy to see Alex Winter be in a major movie since I'm a big fan of Freaked, and come on, who doesn't love Bill and Ted? But he barely has 1 or 2 lines as Hefty. And I'm gonna make some people mad when I say this, the guy they double cast as Gargamel and Rozamel was not good. Rozamel was fine since he's a new character, but Gargamel felt phoned in. I know folks are in favor of casting real voice actors instead of celebrities in mainstream movies, but nothing matches the presence of Hank Azaria. And like Rihanna, there was a lack of energy in his performance. He's not menacing, he's not funny. Alright, editing me. I apologize to Rainn Wilson after seeing this. His performance and the writing in that other one worked fine enough. I also originally had something in the script about the guy who did Gargamel in the Nickelodeon show and how they could have gotten him, but I found out while editing that that's made in French and dubbed in English, and the dub is not good. So yeah, they're smurfed either way. I also want to add personally, I have nothing against this guy. I'm sure he's fine in a lot of his other roles. Very prolific too. So get that bag, but he just wasn't good in this. The best casting was John Goodman as Papa. Other than that, Marshmallow as the turtle? Why is there a turtle just there with them? They never explained that. And I think it's because they approached Marshmallow and he was like, man, I don't want to be a Smurf, dude. I want to be a little forest animal. I want to be unique, bro. I'm Marshmallow. There are so many Smurfs that tag along on the adventure that you forget which ones are there. Oddly convenient that they happen to use the exact same character model, just tweaked slightly. The animation overall did feel cheaper than The Lost Village, even if parts of it were sort of inventive. A scan of Wikipedia shows that this was by far the cheapest out of all of these. The character animation wasn't as expressive as the last, and the lighting was very basic, and the interactions between the Smurfs and the real-life settings were kept to a minimum, definitely to save time and money. There's a chunk of the movie where they go to the Australian outback, and you cannot fool me. This entire environment is just CG. That aside, I do think there was real creativity in some areas. They used the speech bubbles in some fun ways early on, and you can see that in the trailer. If you discount the dead eyes during the opening dance sequence, the Smurf Village environments don't look too bad. Same with Rosamel's castle. There's one shot with Gargamel where it looks like a YouTube fan film, but the blending of the Smurfs with the real-life footage was well done. Even with the stylized shading, they made the lighting match. And there's a great sequence that kind of won me over, where they're traveling through all these dimensions and they do sort of a mixed media thing. It's something you've seen before, definitely. There's an anime section that just reminded me of Horton Hears a Who, but it caught me off guard, and it felt like the art department was having fun. There was a great gag where they put the Neighborhood Watch Smurf title card up, and then the OG Smurfs have their own, and it's a crappy little scribble. This had soul. The Lost Village had soul too, and that one might objectively be better, but this one crammed a lot more in visually, beyond the forest setting. And retroactively thinking about it, The Lost Village did have these sort of self-aggrandizing moments where they slow down and they're like, wow, look at this, it's so whimsical, whee! When this moved at a much faster pace and never felt like it was nudging you. The song sequences looked nice. The one that Rihanna sings got pretty surreal, and I enjoyed that. James Corden's little Just Around the Riverbend song has some nice parts. I said it was a musical, and that's actually only half true. Rihanna and Corden are the only ones who sing, and both the songs are just these standard pop songs. They don't reach the highs of It's a Smurf, 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 He's a Smurf, 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 or the iconic Rock This Way sequence, of course. There were points where it looked looked like Uncle Smurf or Gargamel were gonna start singing, but it never happened. I wish they went all the way with it. I knew going in that Smurfs would at least be a little more intriguing than what the trailers made it out to be, and I think there were a lot of things to like with it. It's not my new favorite movie, and won't be getting a rewatch anytime soon, but I didn't hate it. It was on the level of a mid-tier DreamWorks or Illumination movie, with some unique aspects to it. The best looking parts of it are probably going to be up on YouTube, so you can go and watch those instead. They clearly saw the Sonic movies and Spider-Verse and maybe the Bad Guys, and tried to make a big epic story with the Smurfs in that vein, and it doesn't come together like any of those, obviously. It's fine. It's not as shallow as the Neil Patrick Harris movies, but it also didn't have that succinct charm that The Lost Village did. But it did have hype moments, and there was aura. Alright, put this anywhere, this is unscripted, but I think if they gave it a title and marketed it in a way that made it clear that this was like a big grand adventure, I think more people would believe in this movie. But as it stands right now, they just marketed it like a normal new Smurf movie, when it's really not that. It is not that at all. So, marketing team, you effed up. You smurfed up. Guys, we made it. After watching every Smurfs movie, have I figured out what the appeal is? No. Well, they probably make enough money overseas to be considered a valuable license. That's it, really. Les Stromps, Los Pitufos, whatever you want to call them, Smurfs is a global franchise, which in our ever-connected world makes sense for studios from big old Hollywood to look at and say, damn, I want me some of that Smurf money. At least that's my rationalization for why this exists. Anyways, if you want a ranking, it's Lost Village, Smurfs 25, Smurfs 1, Smurfs 2, and then the Magic Flute. And also, please don't forget to check out Dr. Dipshit. I'm very happy to be supporting a piece of indie animation, and I think that is it for the video, pretty much. And congratulations, Shunks! You have just gone this whole entire review without making any baby Smurf forum thread jokes!
That's not funny, man.
I don't know why Doug Walker kept coming up in the video, that's crazy. Right? It was the Oliver and Company review, and then the Smurf review, and then the ending bit from the Little Nemo review. What is it with Doug Walker today?